welcome to episode 0 of the Telltales podcast. I'm Christian.
I'm Deja. Oh, you're Allana. I'm Deja.
And this is episode 0. We'll get better after this, I promise. So, I guess for people that don't know us, I guess I'll pose this question to you two, kind of like how we met in your own words.
Oh, I guess that means not. Okay, I guess that means me.
All right, so the three of us met at a company which will not be named, like Voldemort, and we all worked in this nice program, to build our skills in media and marketing. And we all sat at the same table. All the trainees sat at the same table. Allana and I were across from each other in our little sister circle of friends, and then there was Christian, who was like an outsider.
He was sitting right next to us.
He was one person away from us. Well, away from me on my side. Either way, we grew a friendship, under a lot of stress and craziness of that job. And after we all left that job, we stayed close. And, we started a movie club. Now the movies are gone. So now we're not a movie club. Now we're podcast peeps.
So that's the short and easy on that. But if anybody wants to add any more details, let me know.
I came up with the name. I know.
Yep, the podcast peeps, which I guess our story is sort of parallel of what this podcast is supposed to be. The slogan is a podcast about people of the present, and we are, in fact, people of the present. Just basically a way for other people to connect with human beings, which we find interesting, and kind of relate to their experiences during a time that's almost unprecedented in human history, a global pandemic. I just think it's supposed to make a feeling of positivity during these uncertain times. Just to know what these people are up to and how they're getting through the pandemic in their own way. So this episode 0 is basically a short preview into other future episodes and what to expect for any audience listeners that are just coming across this podcast for the first time. Not like this episode is just for you to dip your toes rather than to jump full in without knowing who we are and not having any context. So
maybe we should say our pronouns too.
We forgot to do that
in the beginning, but maybe we should say our pronouns and maybe
present time.
Let's do it. No time like the present.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
My pronouns are she and hers, and some of my interests include music, sports, movies. That's an interest we all share, as well as television. I feel like television and movies are the same thing, but what else? I really hate explaining my interests because they're never top of mind when it's time to say. So I'll probably just leave it at those. Hair, health. Everyone should be interested in health.
Yep.
Boom. All right.
Boom. Deja, your turn.
Okay.
I prefer she or her. I hate talking about my interests because I'm interested in everything. I guess in the base model of things I'm interested in beauty, makeup and skincare and hair and all girly things. I'm interested in I'd say self-help, read a lot of self-help, spirituality stuff. I could read tarot cards. I shake, as Allana says, I shake my crystals to manifest. Oh, that is, that goes along with our story of how we met. Remember when I had that wall of manifestation at our job? People would put up post-its. Yes. Yeah, so I started a cult at my job. I like to help people manifest their dreams. I feel like one of those people. What is his name?
Motivational speaker. His name is Tony Robbins.
Yes, him. I'm not like him. Better.
The only reason I know that is because Family Guy just made fun of him for like 30 minutes straight. Anyway, Christian, it's your turn.
Yeah, it's Christian, your turn.
How do I beat that? I prefer he or him. Interests include video games, sports, New York sports, so Giants, Yankees, Rangers, and Knicks. And at the time of this recording, the Yankees just got eliminated yesterday from World Series contention, so that was fun.
My condolences.
Well, I'm a Knicks fan too, so we're used to it. We're used to it.
Yeah. Yes, we are.
And movies. I'm a fan of a lot of movie genres. But yeah, I mean, movies is kind of what brought me into the podcast. For you guys, but for the audience, I created a short horror film about last year. It came out almost exactly a year ago.
Wow.
It did pretty well for a no-budget movie, short movie that I made with friends that we kind of made on the spot. And yeah, I think coming out of that from October 2019, we were going into 2020 with the mindset like, oh, we'll create more content. We'll create more short movies or other short skits or whatnot. And then COVID-19 happened. So we've been stuck at home for the past several months, and flash forward to October 2020, I came up with the idea with Abhilasha, who isn't here on this podcast, but she helped me get it from the ground up. She also worked with us in the same training program to sort of set up a podcast where we kind of interview our circle of friends, and then I have you two as a team to join me as us three as co-hosts to sort of keep this going.
Okay.
Doing dance moves.
Being weird is my job. Chill on that.
My fault.
You got it.
Yep. So, so I guess that's kind of what motivated me to do the podcast. I don't know if you guys had your own motivations for jumping in to this unknown with me.
It's crazy because right when Christian asked us, I think I brought it up to Deja like a week prior that I really want to do a podcast.
And I think it's because I listened to a few, and it's not even like on some like on a mental that I'm like, oh, I could totally do that. It's more of like I want to hop into the conversation that they're having. And it could be about, there's one podcast I listen to specifically where they talk about everything under the sun. Like, they talk about movies like we do, like even before podcasting, that's what we did. They talk about shows, they talk about relationships, they talk about, social justice, and they talk about, just, God and the conflicts of life and society. And I think those are just important, interesting conversations to have. And I find myself always wanting to jump in. I'm like, well, instead of just being a dummy and talking to myself in the car while I'm listening to them, I could just join a podcast or start a podcast or be part of one. So, and I'm really into interviewing people too. As a job as a writer, that's something I've had to do a few times, and I've always enjoyed it. And I'm excited for the other things we can do with this podcast as well. We just had our first episode, but I'm super excited for the next one and the one after that. So, yeah.
I think for me, even in the conversation that I had with Allana when we first talked about podcasts, like I wasn't sure if I wanted to like host a podcast or like have my own podcast. But I think what I miss, because in the past, years ago, I used to have my own YouTube channel. And I think I missed having some sort of creative outlet. I always kind of, I guess, sell myself short of always being like, oh, I'm the person who has to be behind the scenes. Like in my career, I do social media for, a big company, a big brand. And, I like being behind the scenes, but I also think that I have the personality. I have, important things to say. I have something to bring to conversations where I think it'd be fun to be in a podcast. And hopefully, being in this podcast, we could share people's stories. I can share my story, and it's just something fun and interesting to do and lighthearted, especially given the times that we're in, with the pandemic. you know, I feel like this is a good time to just like branch out, do something that's interesting, something that's fun, something that distracts you from all the craziness that goes on, you know, in the world. So I'm excited to be a part of the podcast and just, you know, do something a little different, a little just, you know, fun and lighthearted.
I agree. I was also looking to itch
Yeah.
that creative itch. And I guess going to what you said, this really was the seed, the idea that the podcast seeded from was the fact that there's 7 billion people on this earth, and we're not going to hear every story, but at least this is a stepping stone for audience listeners to get to know and relate to some interesting people from our circle of friends. Especially when it's come to what feels like a divisive time in our life, across the country and across the world. This can just be a way of just having people tune out for 30 minutes to an hour and just feel unified with someone that might be on the other side of the planet. To what the audience can expect from this podcast is basically a guest per episode that we bring on, just that we interview, get them to tell their tales, and rather than just pushing out advice that you might hear on like other podcasts, this is more about them telling their story and letting the audience relate to their story, however they may seem or however they would want to. So I feel like we're helping people sort of connect with some remarkable people that otherwise would have gone unnoticed, you know, if we didn't have created this platform for them. So we talked to a few people, or we're going to talk to a few people. We already talked to one of my friends, a DJ by the name of Carlo Wren. He'll come up in episode 1. And yeah, I hope from his appearance that he does get a bit of awareness to the brand that he's building.
Yeah, give them exposure. They can have a place to quote unquote nerd out about their passion. And I was just clarifying that nerd doesn't necessarily mean bad, but they, you know, they're just experts and know, what am I trying to say? They know like little details about things that other people may find a little strange, but this is a safe space for them to just express themselves and obviously get the awareness out about their art if they are artists. So
yeah, whether it's music or sports or fitness. And I feel like what the themes that we've been pulling out from our first few guests is the fact that self-care has been an important part of our lives in the past several months. And I'm hoping that helps the listeners, you know, find that there's someone else like them or has a similar interest that are going through a similar situation with this pandemic and making the most of it.
That's what we should all do. Make the most of it.
That's all we can do.
That's all we can do. Enlightenment.
Was it shake those crystals?
Shake those crystals. Is that gonna be my thing? My shirt's gonna say "Shake those crystals," and it's gonna be me shaking like, no.
The Deja line of merch. I hope that is.
Yeah, and like sage. Our logo on sage, and we're gonna sell it.
Lord.
Oh God.
What an influencer. You're such an influencer already.
Thank you.
If you want to manage the social accounts, I'll give you the password.
No.
Okay.
I gotta yes. My fees are high. I don't know if you can afford that.
Wow.
Oh.
Wow.
It's fair enough.
Wow.
We gotta hustle. Okay? Hustle it.
Hustlers only on this podcast. I think one of the biggest questions I had jumping into this podcast as I was setting it up was, do we involve politics? And I kind of want to get your guys' input. I was thinking originally to just leave it out because I don't want to dissuade listeners from tuning in. But I figured, who am I to limit other people's speech if I'm giving them a platform to speak about themselves and open up? I feel like if it does come up, then so be it.
I think it's one thing to discuss politics versus discuss how you feel about politics. And I think if we center it around what we're feeling based on what's going on, versus what's right or what's wrong. I think that could be like that can make the space even safer because we're not blind. We all know that like shit is bad, and if a certain person gets reelected, it's going to get worse. That's a feeling I have, and I think there's so much going on in the world that it would be, it would seem very, very purposeful and very, very like disingenuous to like not discuss it. You know what I mean? It would seem like we were going out of our way to avoid it because we don't like the static. But there's no static if it's just our personal opinions about what's going on in the world right now. I mean, I don't necessarily think we should be lobbyers for policy or anything like that. Like, I mean, I don't have a poli-sci degree, and to my knowledge, neither of you don't. / you guys don't really, none of us work in politics. But we're still, eligible voters. We're young people. We're people these policies do affect, and we should, if so inclined, be able to speak on how we feel about what's going on. It's less than a month from the election, and it's a big election. So I think we should include it when we feel like it. I mean, and we should also, like, for our guests, leave it open. Like, you don't really have to get into this if you get really riled up or you rather not talk about it or anything like that. So.
I think that I agree with Allana. I think that if it comes up in conversation, I don't think we should like avoid it and be like, oh no, we can't talk about that. But I know that politics in general is just a really touchy subject right now. I mean, there's some people who get, like she said, really riled up about it. There's some people who get really emotional and upset. Want to cry thinking about it because it affects everybody. I think if it comes up in conversation, we are respectful and we let people, say how they feel about things. And no, like she said, none of us have degrees in poli-sci. We're not, great debaters in the subject, but we're living in a world where these politics and this election affects us and we want to say what's on our mind about it, then yeah, we should do so. But I don't think that, I don't want it to ever, get blown out of proportion because you never know how somebody feels about something. And, I don't want to focus too much on it, but I don't want to avoid it either.
Yeah. Like, this is not a political podcast, obviously, but if anything, we're seeing how people are doing, amidst the pandemic. We're having them tell their stories. And I'm sure a lot of people, especially if we're having people of color on this podcast, and I'm sure some white people too, policy affects everyone's life in some way. And if they catch the spirit, they should be able to talk about it on the podcast. I think if this is a safe space, I think it's fine. But if we see it getting carried away, we should as the host, we should be able to we should have a system where we're like, okay, moving on, just so the person or persons don't shift the vibe or whatever. I don't know.
You start playing that music, like in the Grammys when they win the award and they talk too much, you just start playing that music and it goes, and they know to be like, stop talking.
Or just a simple okay. Anyway, so back to your
or that, whichever, the passive way, or just be like, no, we're not doing that no more. Anyways, whichever.
So you like McDonald's over Burger King, right? Or are you, just
Let's
switch it?
The subject. Whatever the reason, we're not going to let it get out of hand. We
right.
All of us know how to read the room.
Let's hope.
I agree.
Because we know how to read the room, but does the guest know how to read the room?
Well, we're gonna read it for them.
Christian's like, oh God, what is happening here?
So this is a good balance of crazy, like like different. I mean, not crazy. I'm crazy, but a good balance of different personalities. I think in this show, they'll balance it out. Don't be afraid, Christian.
The first 5 minutes, Deja was talking about helping people. In the last 5 minutes, she's gonna be chasing down our guest with a baseball bat.
Pretty much. Or we're talking shit in the chat. Like, no, I'm kidding. We will never do that. We will edit that out, Christian. Edit that out.
I can't run very fast, so that wouldn't happen anyway. But anyways,
I agree with you both. I think if it comes up naturally, of course we're gonna let it, and we'll reel it in if need be. But for the most part, this is a podcast where people should feel safe to talk about what they want to talk about, and open up about their feelings. And if politics is involved, then so be it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
Same here.
So I feel like that's a wrap. Episode 1 will come out soon after this. Don't know the exact schedule yet, but if we figure out by the time of the release of this, then I'll write it down below. So thank you, Deja. Thank you, Allana, for both of you for your time. You guys want to plug in your socials?
Oh, okay. So on Instagram, I am ALLANAE. That is Allana E. And on Twitter, I am AE_for real, all one word, FORREAL.
Yes.
And on Instagram and Twitter, it's just my first and my middle name, which is Deja, DEJA, and then Chanel, CHANEL_. Don't really go on Instagram as much as I do Twitter. I love Twitter. But yeah, feel free to follow me on any one of those.
And I only publicize my Twitter. For those of you that want to follow me, stop laughing over it. My Twitter name, and you can make fun of me for all you want, is thecheesellamas, all one word. Ask me about it then, on there. So yeah, if you want to follow me there. But if you want to follow this podcast for any future releases and just to keep up to date on what we are planning, follow Telltales Pod on both Instagram or Twitter. All right, and that'll do it for episode 0.
All right. Bye.
So thank you both. Enjoy your Sunday.
Yes, you too.
Remember, keep the faith and just be what you'll be. I'm an issue by Riley Ritchie.
Like that.
Yep, that's a wrap. Episode 0.
Wow.
Bye.
Nope.